Welcome back guys to Web Dev Mobile Dev, and in this C tutorial on our focus on HTML and CSS for beginners, we are going to be learning CSS basics. We'll see how to add CSS to a website and style that website to look a lot better. So as we saw, CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and basically CSS just helps us style the elements we see on a web page. So CSS is very simple. CSS is just made up of this type of declarations we see here. So you have the selector for the particular HTML element, then you have the curly braces, and you have the CSS rule that is going to be applied to that selector. So what we see here in green are called the selectors for the CSS. So you have H1 here. In this case, we'll be selecting an H1. In this other case, it's an H2 which is selected, and in this other case, it's a paragraph which is selected. Since as we'll be styling HTML elements, the rule for applying CSS is you need to first of all select the HTML element you are going to be styling on the web page. If you want to style an H1 element, you need to select the H1 element. Then you are going to apply a rule to that element which has been selected. Let's say we want to give the color of that H1 to be a blue color. So you are going to specify the property color and give it a value of blue. So you can specify different properties here, and you can also have different values for those different properties. If you consider a case where you want to style an H2 element, you select the H2, you give it the property for this rule is text decoration, and we want to underline that H2 heading. So this is how we specify the rule for underlining the H2. If we take another example, which is the paragraph, you can select the paragraph, you give a property of font family, and you choose now the value. So in this case, you want the font family, the font which is going to be used for paragraphs, to be sans serif. So CSS can be applied to an HTML document in three different ways. You can either add the CSS to the head of your HTML document using the style element. Another way is going to be to add the CSS inline to the element using the style attribute, or you can add the CSS through an external file, a .css file. So we're going to be seeing these different approaches in code. So we're back in the project we created in our last tutorial where we're creating our first website. So this project just has bare HTML, and we're going to be adding CSS in this tutorial. So the current state of the project, we have the HTML document, the index.html document, which is our main entry point to this website. Then we have two other pages, the CSS page and the HTML page, and we have images which were used in the website. So let's open this index.html with live server. So we have the index.html opened with live server, and this is the current state of the website. So we have the learn about HTML page, which basically opens this our HTML page. If we click on this other link, learn about CSS, it's going to open the CSS page. So we want to style this, and we are going to be using the first approach to styling a website, which is using the style HTML element in the head of our document. So if we come to the head of our HTML document and we want to style this website, we are going to start with the style element. So if we start typing style, we take style, then we can now enter the style for this our website. Let's say we want to style this index.html page, and first of all, we want the content not to be close to the edges. We want to give some margin at the left and some margin at the right to this HTML page. So what we do is we come to the style, and first of all, we are going to target the HTML element. In this case, we are targeting the whole HTML document, and it's the body of the HTML document. So we are going to body and put the curly braces as we saw in our previous slides, And let's say we want to give some margin to the left of the HTML document, and want to give a margin of, let's say, 15% of the total screen size. And we also want to give some margin to the right of 15%. If we save this, let's take a look at what we see on our browser. We see that the content has given some margin of 15% of the screen to the left and 15% to the right. So what we can do as well is, let's say we want to give the whole body of our HTML document a background color. So we are going to specify the property here, background color, and give it a value of, let's say in this case you want a linen color, a color which is a bit light, so that we don't have problems seeing the text. And if we save this, we head back to our HTML document, we see that we have that linen color, which is just a bit better. So that's just basically how you add CSS to a website, with the first approach using the style in the head. So you have this, you give the selector, in this case we are selecting the body, and we choose margin left, margin right. These are now the different CSS rules we are applying to this HTML element, which is the body. Let's say we want to apply some other CSS rules to another HTML element. In this case, let's say we are targeting the heading of our HTML document, and let's target the H1, which is the biggest heading, the main heading. And basically the H1 is this one we see, font and web development. If we come back down here, we see H1, font and web development. What we see here is what we are presently targeting. So let's say we want to align this heading to the center. So what we do is we can use the text align property and give it a value of center. If we save now, you see that the heading moves to the center. Let's apply another property. Let's give it a text decoration of underline, so that we are going to underline the heading. If we give it a text decoration of underline, we save, we see that the heading becomes underlined. Let's change the color of the heading. We are going to give it a color of, let's say purple. Yeah, give it a color of purple, and we save. See that the heading changes to purple. If we give it some letter spacing, just to make the letters to be a bit spaced out, we give it some letter spacing of, let's just take the pixel measurement unit. If we give it 2 pixels and we save, see that the letters are a bit more spaced out, and our website is already looking better than what we had previously. Let's now target the H2 heading. If we take the H2, let's target the H2 heading. Let's give it a font family of, sans serif, and we save. So we see that the heading, the H2 heading has changed and is now using the sans serif font. Let's add a new rule to this H2, and let's change the color. Let's say we want to change the color to blue violet, so that it looks similar to the H1 somehow. And we save. See that the H2 heading now is blue violet. Let's target another HTML element on this page. Let's target the paragraph element. So these are paragraphs, and these two are paragraphs. Let's target them, and let's just change the font family. Let's change the font family to sans serif. sans serif as well. I like the sans serif font. So we see that the paragraph changed to sans serif as well, and the website is already starting to take shape. Let's do more. Let's say we want to give these images some border radius. So what we do is we are going to target the images. We are going to target the images and we are going to give them some border radius. And let's give a border radius of 10 pixels. That's just the measurement you need. And we see that this border radii look a lot better. The website is really starting to take shape. So that's just basically what CSS is, this series of selectors and the CSS rules that apply to the different selectors. And you can add as many rules as you like to these different selectors. Another thing I like to say is you don't need to know all these different CSS rules offhand, the different selectors, the different properties that apply to different HTML elements. As developers, we don't store all this information offhand. We can easily Google them and use them when we need. So what we're just doing is we have applied these styles to this particular HTML document, the index.html. And if we look at our website, you see that the styles are applied to the index.html. But on these other web pages, the styles are not applied. That's because the styles were actually introduced in the head of this single HTML document. So the way we can apply these styles to the other pages of our website, if we want to use this very approach, which is using the style in the head, you can simply copy these styles and paste in these other documents. If you come to this HTML on this other HTML page and paste the style in the head, and we save. When we go to our website, if you come to this other page as well, the same styles which were applied to the main page have been applied to this HTML page, and we see the rounded, the border radius, and the colors which we applied and everything. But for the CSS page, the style has not been applied, so we can do the same thing. You can copy the style, which you had already copied. You can copy the style, come to the CSS page in the head, and we paste. And if you come now, we see now that the styles are applied to the CSS page. One thing you notice is that this process is very cumbersome, because imagine a site where you have many pages. It doesn't matter, you need to copy all this code and paste, but that's not really the problem. The problem comes when you need to modify the styles. Take for example a case where you want all the headings to have a different color. Let's say you decide that you want the headings to be green. What you need to do is you need to come to all these HTML documents and start modifying the heading selector for the color in all the HTML documents that have this heading selector, and that's really tedious. It's not the best developer experience. A better way of doing that is going to be to use the second approach which we saw, which was creating an external CSS file. We just need to modify the code only in one place, and that's what we're going to be seeing. So let's go ahead and create that external CSS file. Let's create a new file which we are going to call styles.css, and this file is going to contain the CSS which is going to be applied to our website. So if we come first of all and we copy the style present in our index.html, we copy this style and we paste it in our styles.css. If we come back to our index.html, we go to the other pages and we clear all these styles, the style attributes, things as we want to link to them from our styles.css. They no longer need to be here. We can remove them from the individual HTML documents. So we clear. So I've gone ahead and moved all our CSS to this styles.css file, and now there's no CSS in any of these HTML documents. So if you come back to our website, you see that there's no CSS applied to them. They are back to the way they were at the start of this tutorial. So what we want to do now is to link now these different websites to this single source of truth, this single CSS file, so that they can pull their styles from there. And the way we do that is we are going to come to the HTML files themselves. So we'll need to come to the HTML document and specify and use this HTML element called the link in the head. So if we type link, we see that we have this attribute, the style sheet. It tells us that we're going to be using a style sheet, and this href, which is an attribute you already saw, is going to be linking to the CSS file. So here, since as this index.html and the styles.css are in the same directory, that are the same level, we can directly put the styles.css here, styles.css, and if we save now, you see that our index.html file picks up the CSS and is styled in that way. The other pages have not yet picked up the CSS, so we have to hook them up as well. So what we do is we are going to come to the other page, style.css. Here we are going to use the link as well, link. But take note that now the CSS file is out of this directory, the pages directory. So we have to move out of the pages directory before we can see the CSS file. So we have to move up one level, .. Then we come now to the styles. We see now the styles. You can save, and the CSS page is now going to have that applied. We have to apply to the HTML as well. We come to the HTML and it's the same thing. The HTML is one level out, one level deep. So we have to first of all come out of the HTML, out of the pages folder, then we can now have the styles. And if we save, the HTML page is styled as well. So if you had noticed something, the styles we applied did not work actually the way we expected them to work, because there had to be some margin to the left and right of these pages, and you see that that margin is not being applied. Even the colors on this HTML and CSS page are not being applied, and the reason why that happened is because I made an error here. I didn't have to copy the style HTML element as well. The CSS file simply has the styles which are being applied to the HTML document, so you just need to specify the different rules, the selectors and the rules in your CSS file. So this is what we had to copy. The style HTML elements do not have to be there as well. So if we save now and we go back to our HTML, our CSS, we see that the styles are now being applied, and we have that margin which we expected to see, and everything is working well. So I've already seen these two ways of applying CSS to an HTML document. I've seen the application of CSS in the head using the style element, and I've seen how to apply CSS externally using a .css file. What we have not seen is how to apply CSS inline using the style attribute. So let's go ahead and see how that is done. So let's say, for example, I want to style this anchor element differently from the other HTML elements. We want to style this anchor element inline. If we come to our web page, you see that there are three anchor elements, and there are basically these three anchor elements we see here. So we want to style this first anchor element differently. Let's say we want to give it let's give it a green color, and want to remove this line from this anchor element, and let's do it inline. So the way we style using CSS inline is you need to use another attribute called a style attribute, style, and you give it the value. In this case are the different CSS rules which are normally applied to CSS. Let's say, for example, we see the different rules which are being applied to elements. we need to give these rules, in this case, inline. So we are going to come here, and in this style, so we are going to be giving the rules inline. So we want to give it a color of green, color green, and if we save, we see that this anchor element becomes green on saving. And if we want to take out the line, we can give it a text decoration, text decoration of none. And we see that we no longer have the line there. So that's how you style in CSS inline. You just need to use this style attribute. You place in any HTML element you want to style inline, and you define the different values, the different rules you want to apply to that element to style it. So we can take away the style. Since as we've already seen how to add it inline, we can take away the style to leave things consistent and have all our styles in the styles.css. So basically, this tutorial we have seen how to style an HTML page, to style a web page. I've seen the different ways of applying CSS. So we style the heading, we style our paragraphs, style the images. All the different pages have been styled from an external style sheet in this case. So a summary of this tutorial. In this tutorial, we saw the syntax of CSS. We saw that CSS is all about having a selector to which a style has to be applied, and you have the rule that defines the style which is going to be applied to that selector. We have seen how to add CSS to a web page. We saw that we could either add it in the head, which we demonstrated, in an external CSS file, which we demonstrated, and which is the pattern which we recommend. And we saw how to also add it inline. And we also looked at some CSS rules. A rule which is just a property value pair. We saw the text align, which we used in the heading. The value was center. We saw the property text decoration, and the value which we gave was underlined. We saw the property color, which had the value of purple, and we had other properties like the border radius property, which had the value of 10 pixels, the margin left and right properties, which had values of 15%, and there are more properties to CSS, as we are going to be seeing in the upcoming tutorials. More properties, the most commonly used properties, which we are going to be explaining as the tutorials go along, and as we see and recommend. There's no need keeping all these properties offhand. When you need the property, you can simply Google it and see how the property is applied. Thank you for watching this tutorial, and if you got value from this tutorial, consider leaving a like and subscribing to this channel for more tutorials of this nature.